Good morning, residents of Kensington. This morning we're visiting with our councilwoman, Miss Maria Quinones-Sanchez, and we're here to do just a little insight because we're connecting our government to our people and our people to our government. It's always been that way. It always will be that way. That's the premise of Philadelphia to begin with. However, in this day of confusion, we have few politicians who actually represent that. Ms. Quinones-Sanchez here, I've not only seen her come out to community meetings, but I've seen the effect of both her actions and her staff's actions on the community as a way to incorporate the community into the business. This I haven't seen for a long time in Kensington. It's very refreshing to see a councilwoman like this take charge of our area and actually start to work with us to see what we can do. Good morning, Ms. Sanchez.
Good morning, thank you.
I don't mean to, well, let's start with life foot here. Did you grow up in Kensington?
No, actually I didn't. I followed the natural kind of trajectory of Puerto Rican immigrants who came, or migrants who came to Philadelphia, public housing in the Spring Garden area. Then we moved to scatter sites around 7th and Master. Bought our first home in Hunting Park, where I spent about 30 years of my life, and now I've been a longtime resident of North Square, which is around 2nd and Diamond. So I didn't grow up in Kensington proper, but having gone to school at Mastbaum, which was in Frankfurt and Allegheny, I feel like Kensington has been my neighborhood.
Yeah, it's just the way you described your upbringing and how you merged your way along. Mm-hmm. That is the essence of Kensington.
Yes, it is. For many people who live in Kensington, like the folks who moved to Hunting Park when we did in the early 70s, first home they purchased, and that's where we've been.
Now, I grew up in Kensington, and I moved away for a while when I got married and came back again. And it always concerned me that no matter where you go, you talk about Kensington, it's like you get a common reaction, oh yeah, that's Kensington. Oh yeah, stay out of there. Oh yeah, it's dangerous there. And even my own family, it's like they've moved out of the area, and it's like, why do you live there? I said, I don't understand what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. In essence, what we have in Kensington is what everyone's trying to accomplish, and we've had it for decades now.
Kensington is very interesting because it's a microcosm of what has happened to this country in terms of you take a neighborhood that grew out of the industrial area, the manufacturing era of Philadelphia, where the neighborhood was created because there was so much work and people moved into the area. They were able to purchase a house, work in the area. Post-industrial Philadelphia, where we've lost the manufacturing sector, it's been one of the areas that when I got elected, I've worked around the most because I understand the importance of manufacturing to neighborhoods like Kensington. It's one of the areas that I focus. My whole business tax reform has been around trying to keep the manufacturing that we have and figuring out if we can expand it. I'm very hopeful that President Obama has started to talk about how important manufacturing is to urban centers. And I think Kensington is our opportunity to rebuild, potentially rebuild the manufacturing sector. And then in terms of the neighborhood and the people who live there, I think there's a lot of great people who unfortunately feel stuck because of the type of divestment that they've seen in Kensington. So I think Kensington is full of opportunities.
Well, it's only a natural reaction in a lot of ways. I mean, as we fall on harder times as we go forward, economic assimilation is not really that easy. And people become completely disenfranchised to the extent where they'll go for a program, but that program might not exist any longer because it's been cut. Mm-hmm. Just like they cut the music programs and the arts programs from the schools.
Absolutely.
They might have to cut and cut and cut. But I'm more for representing Kensington the way it is, see, where we do enjoy our title, and we are not afraid to work for that which we're looking to achieve. All we need is to be pointed to show us where the door is at. So I'm not against that at all, and I think it's an excellent opportunity at this point in time because we've been down so long that this is nothing for us.
Right. Well, but that's part of the Kensington spirit as I meet people and talk to folks. In my first 4 years, we spent a lot of time working with organizations like Impact Service to stabilize the corridor. We've put a lot of money in the facade rebuilding, and you can see the density, the concentrated density of a business sector corridor piece that's beginning to thrive. You have people who now want to move into the area in terms of businesses because of the density. There's so many people there that it's a great place to do business.
Yeah.
And so now what we have to do is expand some of that work into the neighboring blocks around stabilizing some of the homes, some of the vacant properties that exist in the area. And so it's a long-term plan, but I think that we have the right amount of energy, expertise, and commitment from folks like you who believe in Kensington. I believe in Kensington, and I wouldn't have run for office if I didn't believe in the potential of neighborhoods like Kensington.
Wonderful. And with the opportunities that are coming our way, with all these achievements, are actually the congealing of a Kensington infrastructure. That's what I think we've been absent of so long. A political voice, because we've been spread out to, as I said, cuts happen. There's not so many people, and you have to start connecting things together to try to do more than one thing with one action. And I understand that. But now, as we're getting back to perhaps the community's involvement, to work in a symbiotic relation with the government. That's the way it was supposed to be from the beginning.
Right. It is about we the people.
What do you think, what percentage of employment or jobs may be opening up for Kensington in these programs that come in? Is there a certain staple earmark that has to be a Kensington resident to be receiving this job?
Well, one of the things that we're committed to doing, and the reason I pushed the business tax reform legislation that we did last year around the manufacturing sector, one of the things that we did as a policy in the city is we created a disincentive for factories to stay in Philadelphia. And the way we taxed profitable companies and companies who were creating things that they were selling to the global market, we created such a disincentive with our tax structure. And so one of the things that I learned when I was running for office back in 2005, when I started before my campaign, I would go to these small manufacturers and they didn't want to talk to elected officials. They say, you guys do not get it. You guys are running us out of the city of Philadelphia. And so when I got elected, I went back and said, okay, now I'm elected, will you talk to me? And I quickly found out that our policies in the city was crippling manufacturing. So we shut it down because of our business tax structure. So the single sales factor portion of the business tax reform legislation that I passed last year goes to the core of manufacturing, because it says to a manufacturer, you can create a product in Philadelphia, and if you sell it globally, which that's what manufacturing is, it's a global market, you're not going to have to pay that 6.5%. That could be the difference between your ability to compete in that market, and no one else is paying it. There's only 4 jurisdictions in the country that have this tax that works against manufacturing in Philadelphia. It was one of them. It's New York, Detroit, and we've seen what's happened in Detroit and Washington, D.C. So, I quickly learned after I was able to talk to my manufacturers about what we were doing wrong, that tax had to be removed from them. That was a huge impediment. So we're hopeful that, one, we can keep the manufacturing sector that we have. One of the things that I also pushed in the first 4 years in council was a study to look at what is left of manufacturing in the city of Philadelphia. And PIDC did this wonderful study that showed us we had 110,000 manufacturing jobs and allied manufacturing jobs in the city. So the manufacturing sector is not dead, as people believed. It's actually has survived. And so with that study, we were able to say to the city, this sector is alive. We need to keep these jobs and we need to expand them, because we also found that the average pay for these jobs was about $50,000. What's $50,000? A livable, sustainable wage for a family such as Kensington. So that was the first thing we did. Now what we're looking at is, how do we create a hub for manufacturing to come together, different types of ally manufacturing, to go and reoccupy some of these vacant factories that we have. So we are working with that. I think that the Commerce Department, the PIDC, all of our economic engines in the city now get it and say, okay, how do we do that? How do we build on the creative economy of artists? How do we pool all of those resources so that people can come back to manufacturing and come back to Philadelphia. So I think we're on the right track. A lot of work to do, but we are on the right track because we got people paying attention.
The car is still in the shop, but it's got a lot of body work already done.
Exactly, exactly. And then one of the underlying issues that we've seen in Kensington in particular, in the 3424 zip code by Kensington and Frankfurt, is we have huge drug problems. And from a user perspective, we have the sale, and I'll talk a little bit about what my thinking is on some of these open air drug markets, but we have a huge recovery community that has also had some interactions with our prison system. So you have folks coming out of jail with drug usage, and I'm extremely concerned about Corbett's budget proposal that really attacks that sector.
Yes, they do.
The cash assistance for people in recovery is going to hugely impact Philadelphia and in particular Kensington.
Well, with the way the conversation's been directed, the governor is absolutely correct in his stance. However, just like the recidivism and recovering addicts, in 2012, I would think the conversation, and especially with the legalizing in certain situations, I would think that the people would start wanting possibly a step backwards to understand now you have emancipated people over the age of 18 deciding what their leisurely intoxicant is going to be. And the regulations of this, and just like prohibition lasted like 3-4 years. And then they brought it back because all it did in keeping it illegal was cause the underlying market, the criminal market, to thrive.
Right.
Now they're doing the same thing here, and you have they're not recovering addicts, they're just somebody who hasn't been caught again yet.
Right.
It's habitual use, it's regular use, and other than an addictive problem, they're normal functioning residents.
Right.
Just like when they're talking about the new policy where they're going to arrest and put away the prostitutes. And understandably, some of these prostitutes are on various drug substances, and they're committed to that addiction. But there is the one in the background who's a single mother. Maybe she's an addict too. But she's trying to subsidize what she's already getting in subsidization to make it from month to month to month to month. Now you take this person off the streets, what's going to happen to her family?
Yeah, it's a very layered and complex problem, and while I don't think Philadelphia, the current political climate has looked at legalizing it, it's a conversation that we need to start having and looking at if we can't provide the support for people to deal with their addictions, we do have to decriminalize some of these layers, because we can't arrest our way out of this. One of the things that is hugely expensive, and we spend now 25% of our budget is between police, prisons, and the courts. And one of the things that I've learned is that some of these arrests, these low arrests, are so expensive to prosecute. And why are we just feeling? Just yesterday, I had a huge roundtable with the prison commissioner talking about long term. Where are we going to be? And it's sort of like the court's probation is hugely under-resourced. There has to be something different.
We have the nuisance laws, which are very respectful to everybody. And if you're going to act like this in public, as I'm telling people, if you want the right to act a certain way, then you at least have to be adult enough to deal with it. That doesn't mean throwing your stuff here and throwing your stuff there and hanging out over here. And you have homes for that. But then this is what I was getting on when I was asking people already about what can we do to address the regulations in Kensington. Perhaps we can make Kensington a test pilot for the entire nation, for the entire world for that matter, to see exactly what we can do with this as far as you open it up, you give distributorships within the residents of Kensington, and you start from there. Next thing you know, you have sponsors coming in to promote this and look at this. And your laws are already there for if they're going to act this way, if they're going to act this way, you know where you're going to end up. But outside of that, you're not going to be targeted simply because or downgraded in your citizen status simply because you have an addiction or even if we can get away
and
from
people are
addiction to
functional.
preference.
One of the things that I've learned working with our Department of Mental Health and Behavioral Health is people are functional addicts.
Yes.
and they carry normal lives. They go to work and
We've been cultivated over decades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are the end result, and it's nothing more. And the main effort would be immediately. There's no more bad market, and immediately there's minimal access for our children. And immediately, instead of, oh well, this is illegal, so I'm going to try it, is, oh, that's mom and dad. That's what they do. They go down the corner, just like the guy going in and get a quart of beer or something like that, and.
So
I'd rather
it's
be educated on it and make my choice.
it's definitely a conversation
Yes.
that's time has come. As I said, we don't have the resources. I'm pleased that the mayor has picked McPherson Square to do his citywide cleanup project. I want him to see areas like Kensington and Somerset, and so that he can recognize that we got to do things differently. We just can't keep doing the same thing. It's not working.
No, and all we do is regurgitate the same thing over and over again. We're just throwing out.
We
money
can't.
out of
We
it.
can't afford it. We cannot afford it.
And we're also spending on the other side, so we're keeping the criminal going at the same point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty loud and clear. It's been echoing for centuries. The people are speaking.
Mm-hmm. And they are. They are by their activities.
Yes.
We're not stopping these activities. We have not been able to manage it.
No,
We haven't even.
we are resourceful. We are creative people.
Yeah, we have not even been able to contain it. You know, part of what my discussions with the police department is this containing it and saying as long as it's just there, it's not working anymore.
I think 2012 might be a year where we absolve a lot of the stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, affirmative action is another thing I'd like to touch on, because I heard recently that the Supreme Court's going to be addressing that again. I mean, these policies, they had their day, they had their place, they had their time.
Mm-hmm.
To leave them incessantly in place, it's almost like going full circle.
Mm-hmm.
So you've already gone past your solution. Now you're digging and developing a greater problem than what you had to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've reached a point, a standard, or a bar that people can achieve, people can attain, without that type of sacrifice that they speak of, where the sacrifice is not sacrifice, it's conformity, because it's not temporal. This is what we want, and it seems almost like you will submit.
Well, I think that's the interesting situation with our government is, you know, and I'm supposed to be a lawmaker, is that these things are.
I appreciate you more as a person.
But, you know, the issue of things do evolve, and I think having the conversation and readdressing things is not a wasted energy. It's like there was a purpose and there was a time, and then things change, and then so we have to be flexible enough to kind of change it. And that's one of the things that frustrates me being in government, is this notion of this is the way it is, and it shouldn't be challenged or ever questioned. When I managed an organization, a pretty large organization, one of the conversations I had annually with my staff was, are we doing what our clients need us to do? And if not, then what do we need to change? And be flexible enough to say, it worked for this period of time and now things have evolved. And government doesn't do that easily. It doesn't do it naturally.
That's what I don't understand, because the base premise, the Constitution, the Republic, this is the intent.
Mm-hmm.
The evolution of consciousness of understanding through prayer, or just through meditation, or simply through dedication.
Mm-hmm.
Comprehension, understanding levels evolve.
Yep. It does. And so, you know, the issue of fairness and justice, and, you know, those are terms that are defined based on your value system. So, you know, they're very different for different people, but we should always be willing to have the conversation. And
That's first and foremost.
Yep.
Communication is our number one.
And sometimes we'll agree and sometimes we'll disagree,
Yes.
but that's part of it should be part of the process.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's called communication.
Yep. I agree.
What are your feelings on the partnership that will reconnect the residents of Kensington community with their local library and City Hall through the reawakening of McPherson Square Public Library as the civic hub of Kensington?
You know, one of the things that I'm pleased about is that the level of frustration got to a point from the residents that they not just got angry, but took that frustration and said, we're going to do something about it. For elected officials, there's no better opening than that, when you have people come together and saying they're going to own it. You know, for me, making the investment in McPherson Square, which is a beautiful, I mean, one of the, you know, I live on a square, I live on North Square, and I look at McPherson Square as a gem. You know, and the fact that people are now willing to say, okay, we want to own the good parts of McPherson and deal with the bad, and that then we do what we're supposed to do as elected officials, which is facilitate that process. Because people live there and they have to live there. So I can come in and do whatever investment, but if people there don't own it and say we're going to take care of it. And when in my previous life, when I was in education and I worked with young people, I always used to say to them when they'd come into our facility in our school, is sort of like, this is my desk. When it becomes our desk is when you understand the value of it and you take care of it. And then it's ours. Right now it's mine. Let's make it ours. And so that's what I feel is evolving at McPherson. And we're committed. I mean, it's a beautiful library. It's a Carnegie library. It's not going to go anywhere. But the square, the neighborhood, and the residents have changed, and you have kids. So it's like, what can we do with that great space, so that everyone can use it in a way that you can use the library, you can use the outside in more productive ways. And the movie nights have helped, and so I'm really encouraged by the participation of the residents, and believe that this is just the beginning. I mean, I think even what we end up doing at McPherson is going to evolve as more people become stakeholders in it.
But we are definitely turning heads now in Kensington. And I can't claim it to be anything of the Kensington community other than alumnus who have heard our pleas, people of like mind and like spirit who have traveled our course, have heard us, and now they've come into the area and they've showed us the way. What do you think of the board comprised or composed explicitly of Kensington residents with these professionals to mentor us until we can get a pattern of behavior down, where we have the civic hub reinstituted? In the old country, there was a civic hub for every community.
And there should be. And I think, again, this is one of those things where what the Kensington culture evolves should be dictated by these folks who come together and say, this is the type of behavior that's going to be permissible. And that, one of the things as we work with Impact around doing the inventory of the housing, how do we get folks to come back to Kensington and invest there? When I moved to Norris Square 15 years ago, I did it because my neighborhood civic talked about working folks living together with poor folks and working class folks in this neighborhood. And I bought into that philosophy, and I was one of the first people that said, okay, if I could buy a house anywhere in the city, but I want to live in Norris Square. And I got a beautiful home. And watched how Norris Square transformed itself. Very similar to what's going on in McPherson. I think McPherson is located in a great location because of its proximity to 95, to downtown, the public transportation. It's a great place. And so if we can just, like everything else, it's a diamond in the rough, if we can shine that up, I think people look at Kensington and the great housing stock that's there and say, yeah, I want to live here.
Do you think we'll ever get a ceremony to dedicate our statue?
Which statue is that?
The one of the doughboy out front, the guy who was killed, I believe it was World War I.
I didn't know there's a statue?
Yes, there's a statue there, and something came about when they were going to originally dedicate it, and never was dedicated.
Where is it located on the square?
It's right up front, close to Kensington Avenue, on the Indiana side of the park.
I have to go look at that.
Yes, he was.
It's a veteran?
Yes.
Oh.
And his family, from what Tessa had told me, his family actually had resided in Port Richmond. And because it was never dedicated, every year they come out on the anniversary and they used to have.
Oh, we absolutely need to touch base with them.
Never acknowledge it. It's kind of like a one-of-a-kind type of a statue.
Wow. No, we absolutely need to do that, and we need to work through our veterans office here in the city to make sure that gets its proper due. We're actually redoing a Fairhill Square Park. We're remodeling it. And it's interesting because a veterans group came to me and said, can we do something in the park for veterans? And so here in McPherson, we already have one. We should give it its proper due. Absolutely, I'll look into that.
Is there any possibility that Kensington might rise to the standard, be included in the historical track? of Philadelphia?
I would have to check with the historical commission. I know that there's certain designations, and there's obviously a whole protocol for that. I don't know, but I'm sure that it has a historical perspective. I know that when in Frankfurt they were looking at Frankfurt's history, part of what they did on the corridor was signage to talk about Frankfurt's history.
Yes.
Those are all things, again, that we could do. I mean, that's the beauty of this
Anything's
stuff.
possible when
Absolutely,
everything comes together.
absolutely.
But that's where I personally have been injecting in many of the meetings, and I think this is what's actually turning the key here, is the fact that we're going door to door, we're awakening the residents to come on, it's time, it's now going to be our voice.
Right.
We've been told what was been wrong with us, we've been told how to fix it, we've been told what we should do to take care of it. And now that it seems like the conversation has finally come to a point, we've run out of finances, now they're tapping, what exactly do you think we could do? And it's wonderful that we resorted to that, and it's, at the same point, it's rough to consider we've taken so long.
Right.
But no amount of time is too long
Absolutely.
to reach the point that we now are at.
Right. Right. No, I totally agree with you.
Is your office or any of your staff involved in the overseeing of the elections for McPherson Square?
You know what? I know we're involved normally in those types of processes. We tend to be spectators and really respect the community process. So I'm not sure how engaged we're going to be in that process.
Because that came up at the last meeting last week, and it just came to my attention, and I've been since emailing several of the key proponents like Epic, like Impact, to see exactly if there's been any registration or any voting slips made up. Has been anything been left at McPherson, or is it being publicly notified, or are they actually going door to door?
Yeah, I didn't even know that they were going to do an election process. I thought we were kind of working at a ad hoc until we got some things accomplished before they formalized the structure. So I wasn't aware that they were formalizing some sort of. Because I know there's the Friends of McPherson Library, and then there's the Friends of McPherson Square that is a little broader. Or are they trying to bring those two together?
And putting my 2 cents into it too. And what it kicks out as the freeholders of McPherson Square Public Library Civic Association. To be a hub, to be an acting arm, so our councilwoman, so our mayor's director, so our mayor, so our president, so any governor can come into Kensington, come to the Civic Hub. The community will come together to not only meet them, but to welcome them. At that point in time, we can all have our voice, and what needs to be done in Kensington, just ask somebody in Kensington, they'll tell you.
Right. No, people will always tell you what they need. Yeah, I wasn't aware that something was being formalized, that formal. I know that we were, so I'll have to find out.
Well, I think it's time, because I am tired of hearing all these complaints, positive and negative, concerning our political representation. And it's about time we turn the camera in the other direction.
Yep.
And it's the people who have to step up, because the politicians can only do so much. The people are the ones with the power.
Yep, they are. I don't think people realize how powerful they are. And again, for any elected official, it's great to have people organized. It's just easier to work through that process.
That's what's absolutely astounding about watching your behavior and the way you've come in, and you haven't barged and kicked down the doors like everybody else. You've come in.
I'm listening and
Yes.
listening, a lot of listening, because you really want to hear what people, hear people's frustration and try to come up with sustainable solutions. Because I think the key to all of this is the sustainability of it.
Yes. Well, the sustainability, I think, is going to be greatly influenced or predicated upon the people's involvement,
Right.
participation.
Because we will respond. Elected officials respond.
Yes. Oh, as a matter of fact, I also, when I was doing dishes a couple weekends ago, I heard the announcement where you're going to be bringing to council a suggestion concerning real estate banks.
Land banking. What we're doing is one of our biggest frustrations has been the amount of vacant land and vacant property that exists. And my colleague at the state level, John Taylor, has been very proactive around anti-blight initiatives. So a few years ago, he passed the conveyorship law that allows you, gives the city some tools in taking property that's vacant and blighted. And so his next initiative, he just passed it in the House and it's going through the Senate now, allows municipalities like Philadelphia to create these land banks. And they've been very effective in cities like Detroit and Michigan and other places where the city has an additional tool to acquire vacant properties and turn them over to responsible owners. So I've been working on the local legislation, the accompanying legislation that would allow Philadelphia to do that. And the mayor's team, I've worked on the vacant land task force, I'm on the facilities task force, trying to come up with how do we create opportunities around some of our blight problems. So we're feeling very good that once this passes the state that we can create a mechanism. And I've joined the administration at Boston, at Harvard, where groups from across the country came together, and one of the pieces was land bank and how do you use that as an effective tool. And so what that would allow us to do right now, if a property is vacant for a long time, we seal it, we clean and seal it, and we do this. This will allow us to, in a quicker way, obviously following some protocols, acquire this property, clear the title on it, and turn it around. And right now, the way the process works is we have to wait for the property to become delinquent unless we condemn it. And the condemnation process that we do through our redevelopment authority is very long and very costly.
Yes.
And so in lieu of that, instead of what we have to do now is bring up the property for sheriff's sale, bid on it, acquire it, and fix it. The land bank gives us a quicker tool to acquire that property and turn it around. And like any other vacancy, the quicker you put it back to productive use, the cheaper it is. And so what's happened in the city of Philadelphia is the resources are limited. It takes us forever to acquire. And unless we have a project, we're now turning this around. So we believe this is going to be a great tool for the city and for neighborhoods like Kensington, for instance, where we have a lot of vacancy. People assume it's city-owned. It's not. It's all in private hands. Mm-hmm. As an owner, you're protected by law, and it's hard for us to acquire those. And so,
do you think at all that this land bank, do you think it might blossom into an availability for each district to be in control of the properties within their district?
The idea is that you would have the citywide governance structure that really allows the city to plan long-term what it's going to do with the land that it owns and the land that's delinquent. Right now, the estimates are we spend about $20 million maintaining and sustaining our vacant land and properties through L&I, through what we do with the horticultural, who does some of the maintenance pieces to this. So it gives us an opportunity to take that money and divert it and create home ownership and investment opportunities in a different way. And one of the things that becomes very important for us is you want to create accessibility and affordability all over the city. Yes. So what you don't want is the city to sell the most valuable land for a short-term gain, as opposed to the city planning and saying this is where we're going to build affordability and accessibility, because if not, you can get concentrated poverty. And so what we want to do is create, in a more proactive way, rebuild our neighborhoods and stabilize our neighborhoods. So it's an important tool. It's one that we've been working on it for 4 years. I very early on when I got elected, as early as February, I started in January, and by February I said, okay, we got to deal with this, so that we don't have the speculation. Bob Coyle properties, there's 480 properties in Kensington that are part of the scam.
I see a lot of them. I was looking on the BRT.
Yes.
It's like they're all owned by the same person. It's down, either different real companies or different
So there's
individuals.
480 properties in Kensington that were owned by Coyle and his investment groups. Many of them are in foreclosure. We've actively been working with the banks as they've come up to foreclose to try to create home ownership opportunities. Many of these people thought they were renting to own, and so they were scammed, and the banks did not do due diligence. They allowed him to use his own company to clear some of these loans. So they're very tangled up, and it's a huge problem because it's in such a concentrated area.
Was someone interested in purchasing a home in Kensington presently, what would be their best avenue of exploration?
Well, again, we're trying, and that's what the land bank would allow us to do. It really, we've done some neighborhood stabilization work with impact services, clearly not at the scale that we could be doing it.
Yes.
But again, we have to be able to acquire these, and these are all in private hands. And that's one of the, when you look at the land bank legislation, neighborhoods like Kensington would benefit the most because we can quickly get these properties, get them to a nonprofit or a private developer.
Yes.
To turn them around. But you got to do the scale. You got to be able to get all hands on deck, which we've not been able to do because most of them are in private ownership. They're delinquent. There's an estimate that there's about $70 million in back taxes and water that are owed in those properties. So it's a lot of work. But again, this is one tool in the arsenal of
Yes.
us revitalizing Kensington.
Excuse me, let me just double check this camera. Make sure the battery in the film's still going. This is very, very good. I don't lose any of it. Beautiful. Nothing to worry about.
Okay.
Regarding that land bank, another opportunity that I hear as of last Sunday, I heard the mayor announcing that the treasurer is releasing another $50 million to Philadelphia.
For tax credits.
It's being channeled in through Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation.
PIDC.
Down Port Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
And it's available to people in impoverished neighborhoods, entrepreneurs, startup groups, somebody
Mm-hmm.
looking to conduct a business. Who all is this going to be open to?
Well, it's supposed to be competitive. One of the best things about this tax credits is that last year the city of Philadelphia did not receive any tax credits, and I know that it hurt some of the developments, and fortunately in some cases we had some developments in the district that did not receive tax credits where we were able to get some federal money or some others. But we're hoping, and PIDC would manage this process, that we'll get folks to submit projects in neighborhoods like Kensington that will create jobs, home ownership opportunities. So we're looking for the creativity and where this funding could be used as gap funding to finance.
Neighbors for the neighborhood.
Right. And so we're very excited about that. It's $50 million. Sounds like a whole lot of money. It's not a whole lot of money depending on the projects. But again, the goal is to create jobs and those opportunities. So it's a real coup for the city of Philadelphia. And then folks like me in council who have, in addition to that, potentially some NTI money left over. So this allows us to get creative in financing projects that normally wouldn't get financed but have a huge community impact.
Do you think that we could put in for it under the freeholders of McPherson Square? Do you think we could prompt for that as far as our 501c3 is going to go? And perhaps we can do something from our end to help with this land bank that's going on, because then we'd be able to have a stipend to work with to actually start effectuating what you're already trying to do.
Well, one of the things that I would say to you, the good thing about what's going on in Kensington is that we do have currently some really good community development corporations that are in the area with a lot of expertise. You take
Yes.
someone like Impact, you know, it's not that they can't do this work, it's that the resources haven't been there. So I think when we look at a McPherson, I think one of the roles for a group of the civic is to help drive our planning so that the experts who are there, both from the private and the nonprofit world, could help us implement the agenda. I'd like to see the civic be kind of a visionary group around what do we need to do, and then I think there's enough stakeholders already in play that could help us do some of those things.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm hoping that the end board is going to end up looking like. Myself, I'm running for president of this board.
Oh, wonderful.
I think that the television station would be positioned greatly at the head of this board.
Mm-hmm.
Impact, I've already seen their work. They've already developed loan officers and everything.
Mm-hmm.
The work that Jonathan Centeno has done with Epic
Yep.
is absolutely phenomenal in connecting with people. The Friends of the McPherson Square Library, the Friends of Philadelphia
Mm-hmm.
Free Library
Mm-hmm.
have done awesome work in connecting the people and getting the programs out there and actually taking the edge off, breaking the ice and starting the conversation.
Right.
These people, and Mimic,
Mm-hmm.
not to mention how many others there are. There's people, my friend Dennis, He's working with the soup kitchens and the addicts on the
Yes,
street.
I met him at the meeting, and he was telling me some of the great work he's doing. That's what I'm saying. I think Kensington is poised with some built-in stakeholders. So I think it's how do you bring all those folks around the table and processes like the stakeholders and others to say, okay, this is what we want to do. So we want to refurbish, 15 homes around the square, and we want them to be homeowner opportunities. Impact, what can you do for us? What is it that we need, and help drive that agenda. As it relates to the park, is sort of like, what are the usage that we need in the park, and how do we create those spaces? As it relates to the corridor, what types of businesses do we need in the corridor that will be complementary to what's already there? And how do the civic become the marketers for that, so that we can get those types of businesses in the area? So there's plenty of work, and
Yes,
there's tremendous built-in resources. So it's how do we coordinate that and manage that?
Well, I think Impact has been going well above and beyond. They even have founded the K&A Business Association.
Which is very effective, one of my most effective business
And
associations.
I think we have proponents now, both corporate and civic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if we can get these comprised in one board, where they're actually speaking to each other.
Yep.
I mean, it's a Philadelphia tradition. At the table has to be the politician, has to be the man of faith, has to be the community eye,
Right.
has to be the community merchant, it has to be somebody from the community.
Right. No, I completely agree, and I
I
think
think we have all those elements.
I
now.
think you have them all, and I think you have a level of expertise, unlike other neighborhoods where you got some built-in experts who really know, and the business association has been incredible. I think they're committed. I think the fact that you see the level of density that you
Yes.
see in that area is an example of that. So yeah, I say all the elements are there. So it's how do you bring that all together, and then you divide up the work. Impact is what we need you to do. The business association, this is what we need you to do. The friends group, we need, how do we support the library, and again, how do we redesign that square so that it's utilized?
Well, that's why I'm trying to also encourage a conversation between the board and even the division Impact. Patricia Codina, who's in charge of K&A Business Association, in charge of our corridor there. She is absolutely everywhere. She's here, there, she's everywhere.
And she has to be.
But the fruits of her efforts are now available as another asset for us to work with.
And the diversity that they've done on the corridor is amazing to me.
Yes.
The level of diversity among the business owners and the types of businesses, it's for me, it's just really one of those success stories. I think they do a fabulous job. One of the things that was important to me was, how do we fix up some of the corners visually? If you look at what happened at Kensington and Allegheny, once we fixed that facade, it just totally changed the look. And so, again, I think that it's all there.
Now, loitering, I hear from last meeting they're going to be approaching that or addressing that now too, posting some signs and moving on that. And loitering, from as far as I can remember in Kensington, we hang around on corners, and that's our community meetings a lot of times. I understand the necessity of it being respectful and not intrusive or not disruptive, and that's the way it's always been. We could sit outside and we could work on our car all day, we can drink our beers, do whatever we're doing, and the police would ride by, the music's not too loud, they would never say a word. But then when it came down to being loud and unruly and stuff like that, it was a different story. Do you think it's going to be returning to a point of civility along that nature? I mean, I, for one, wish to welcome the 24th Precinct and all the officers into the area.
Well, it's one of the conversations we've been having with, and obviously we have a new captain, Captain Vogt, who's very committed. I think the problem that we've had with the type of loitering that we have, that it is a drug element. What happens, we got to break down what happens at Kensington and Somerset. That cannot be acceptable to anybody. So we may have to go to one extreme to get back to what you're depicting, but we cannot allow 50 guys who are clearly, doing drugs or selling drugs to take over a corner.
Well, that's why I think it's it's right for the regulation conversation, because if we can get individual distributorships for different things and maximize the education, and instead of handing out the pamphlets on the street, actually maybe use one of these warehouses to convert it, a place where they can take showers, a place where they can emergency housing, where they can come on their own accord. Instead of taking to the streets, taking to them, because they're going to use it and they're going to throw it. Have a place for them to come in.
And again, these become one of those controversial conversations. I know I take a lot of heat from my support of organizations like Prevention Point that have been incredibly effective at reducing HIV spread in the Kensington. And it's interesting that you talk about something as simple as a shower, because one of the things, we have them in a temporary location, and the director, Jose, and I have been talking about how do we site them somewhere else where they can expand some of their services. And the first thing he said to me when I was telling him, what do you need in the expanded space? And he said, it'd be nice to have a few showers.
Yes.
It'd be nice to have a washer and a dryer. And
Exactly.
I'm saying, when he first said this to me, I'm like, why? He says, Maria, if I can get those guys to come in, take a shower, wash their clothes, they would look different.
Yes.
But again, how we site that location is one that we've been working on and ensure that he has the funding. So you're right. Those are those very controversial conversations with the residents about these are members of our community.
Yes.
And
but we have the bar, and these are all adults that we're dealing with. We have to restore their self-respect. They've been criminalized,
and demasculated.
Yes.
When you can't work and provide for your family, it's very demasculating.
And even with a lot of these drug testing policies, you're not allowed, you're not able to work to provide for your family. We've developed in Kensington a whole new life will find a way. And that's what we've done. But now we can move that back around, because as the way of the world and the older generations come this way, a lot of their base politic is very harmonious with our constitutional premise. We have to get back to a communication point where our people are talking to our representatives, and our representatives are talking to our people, and that there's a harmony there.
Yep. Okay, are we almost ready to wrap up?
I think we're done.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm going to sign off on this stuff, and I thank you so much. I look forward to...
I thank you. This has been Councilman Maria Quinones-Sanchez, and it's been absolutely a wonderful, marvelous interview here. I'd like to thank her for her time this morning.
Thank you.
Myself and the entire Kensington community.
Thank you. I look forward to our work together.